Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today I'm joined with Wes Henderson, who is one of the owners at Talona Ridge RV Resort, which is a brand new RV resort that Sandy and I are staying at in East Ellijay, Georgia, in the north corner of Georgia, an absolutely beautiful location. Wes, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, we booked this. You guys were at the Tampa RV show and we're running a special, and we booked it. And I know whoever I was talking to at the booth mentioned it was a family-owned business.
Yeah.
And I'm big into family-owned businesses, so kind of even back then in January, I kind of had the thought process of I want to talk to these guys when we get there, because I just wanted to kind of get the background on what would make you guys tackle this project, because this is a massive project. But it's beautiful. I mean, you're 2/3 open at this point, still finishing the one section, but an incredible vision of what the RV resort is going to look like. So, tell me a little bit about, what made you guys decide to take on this project first?
Well, our background was actually not in RVing at all. It was apartments. My grandfather started our family business back in the day. He was actually born, so in Ellijay, down below us is a city called Jasper. And outside of Jasper was a place called Pea Ridge, which was known for its poverty. Mm-hmm. And it was an area where people would be mining marble and doing moonshine. Right. And he and his family were too poor for an area known for its poverty. So they had to go down to Atlanta in a place called Cabbage Town, which is down where the old Braves Stadium was in downtown Atlanta. They called it Cabbage because a lot of Appalachian families moved down there and they boiled their cabbage down there. So we got that cabbage smell. But they moved down there, so his father was working in a factory, and he grew up, and out of high school, he joined the fire department and started a furniture restoration business in the basement of the firehouse. And of course, the fire chief said, "Mr. Leon, if you burn down this firehouse, we're going to be the laughing stock of the whole city. You can't be doing this." So he started, I was like, I guess I'll paint outside of the firehouse, and started a painting company. And that painting company grew and grew, and he started painting some apartments, and someone financed him of an apartment complex, and basically because he knew he couldn't sell it, and so he just financed it to my grandfather, mm-hmm. who actually went in there and made it work. Wow. And so with that, he was able to segue into the multifamily business and brought our family into that. And then we decided to liquidate our whole portfolio, I guess starting about 4 years ago is when we started it at the height of the market. And we just felt like the Lord was leading us in a new direction. We couldn't tell you what that direction was, though. we did about 15 years ago, we had done our first project in Gilmer County, which is this county here, was a subdivision right in time for the first that financial recession. Right. So we finished 2 houses and gave them away and sat on that land and watched housing prices tank. And there was 2 banks up here in this area that went under. We're like, well, looks like we're going back to apartments. So we stayed down there and in Atlanta, and then we got some outside of Cartersville and Chattanooga, and that's kind of what we did until we liquidated our portfolio and came up here. So we actually bought some land across the street beforehand. And we started doing some townhouses, trying to, baby step our way into doing some more housing. We actually, in that process, this is way before COVID, we were going to try to be the bank. We brought some builders on, and they weren't doing what they were supposed to do. They were kind of living off the project. So we had to shut that project down, and it was a sure sign that we still needed to keep the captain's hat on. Mm-hmm. As a family. So we got back in there, finished those townhouses, and I remember hearing down the grapevine on this property here that the story was 2 guys out of Argentina bought this land and are doing a trailer park. And I'm sitting there going, oh no, there's a trailer park right next to this land that we got. in East Ellijay, it's we're going to try to do some commercial stuff. We don't know what it is yet, but I know that a trailer park will ruin my grand plans.
Right.
So I grabbed my brother and my father and mother, and we sat down. I was like, we cannot let this happen. And so we got in touch with the guy who owned this land and was selling it, and he got us in touch with the gentleman who had the contract on it. Turned out they weren't from Argentina; they were from Savannah, Georgia.
A little different.
Yeah, a little different, and they were actually from apartments too. And we asked, "Well, what are you doing with the land?" They didn't give us their plans yet, but they said we've got a contract on it. We'd be willing to sell you our contract on the land. And I said, "Well, we'll take it." And so we met with them to sign it, and we learned they were apartment guys. We wanted them to come and see one of our projects to build, and I asked them, what were you guys doing here? What was your plan? And a chap who actually stayed on board and helped us build all this, he goes, well, I was going to do an RV resort. Right. I was like, there's no such thing as an RV resort. You can put glitter on a pink flamingo and call it whatever you want to. It's still a pink flamingo. And I went home and Googled that night, RV resorts, and that's when my jaw hit the floor. Yeah. And that's actually how this thing started. So we had started out with no knowledge whatsoever of the RV industry.
Never owned an RV.
Never heard of it. Never spent
a night in an RV resort.
Next to an RV. Never went into an RV resort. Never went into an RV park. We started learning the first time we went to the Tampa Trade Show, which was the time before we met you guys. We went down there to learn about RVs because I heard there was something like a Class C RV. We had Class C apartments. Right. You don't want Class C apartments. I was like, you don't want no Class C RV. That would be terrible. And then we had no idea. We had to print out a big chart. He goes, what's a Class A? What's it? Oh, it's a motorhome. You know, it is a Class C motorhome. Yes. I mean, we were like in kindergarten again, going over all the different types. And
so what was that process like? Just kind of the whole educational process, of really going into a project that you were, completely uneducated on, and just digging into it.
Humility is the biggest thing. Yeah. It starts with being able to sit around a table and admit you know nothing about what you're going to do, and that's one of the most important things. Because especially in the development world, you'll get some interesting groups of people out there that are they think they've got all the answers, right. and I always grew up. My grandfather would always say, as soon as you think you know something, you probably need to relook at it, because it's either changed or added on to it, and there's some things you're missing as soon as you get comfortable. And so that humility aspect lets you have fun with the unknown. Yeah. And that was when we started getting a taste of RVers, though. We did a focus group with some RVers, and we just fell in love with them, just as people. Getting to they're polite,
they're a special breed.
They're a special breed of people coming from apartments. We had some nice tenants, but we also had some interesting stuff go down. So we were involved in some things that we were not expecting when we were figuring out RV tenants. I'll give you an example. We did a festival up here at Talona Ridge last July, which was supposed to be our opening, and we didn't even have the asphalt streets in. And so we were planning a festival, and we're going, we need to block off the bathrooms so nobody uses the bathroom in the shower, and we need to make sure the trash cans are emptied because we don't want them to light on fire by accident. And a lady who's up here is looking at us and going, where are you people coming from? You're not going to face this at all. And sure enough, as you're meeting these RVers, they're just the salt of the earth. Yeah, and really made us even more excited to get this project done, despite the storm that was coming. Yeah. Because when we had our groundbreaking ceremony up at the top of the hill, it's kind of ironic. A storm was coming over the mountains. We had just had a hurricane come up, the tropical storm, so fall was over in 2 days up here that year. All the leaves are pretty, then whoosh, they're gone. They're gone. And we're standing there. This is before COVID is becoming a big thing, and we're standing there with masks, and there's a storm and lightning in the background. It's like, if that wasn't a sign that we were going to be in for it while we start doing this project, I don't know what was. because just the supply chain madness
Yeah.
hit us hard. But even through all that, getting to talk with these RVers was instrumental, because you guys tell us the good, the bad, the ugly, and you shoot straight, and it's incredibly helpful, especially when you're building a project like this, because this is how Talona Ridge was built, by asking the customer, what do you want?
Yeah.
What do the streets need to be? Where do the pedestals need to be? Yeah. We're not to put a tree,
right?
So there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah. We're not to put the keypad
exactly.
on the gate.
Yeah, exactly. We're not to put the keypad on the gate. How not to put a big red button that says, emergency stop, and make the emergency stop really small and the really big red button really big and really tempting to press. So there's a lot of changes we had to make, but it was fun.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the RV community is such a special community. And before my wife and I started full time, and we never spent a night in an RV. Oh. I mean, the first time we ever drove an RV was the day we drove it off the lot.
Oh wow!
And it's funny. There's quite a few people who are full-time RVers who share that same experience, that we were not lifelong campers and then decided, hey, let's sell everything. Like, it was, I don't want to say a whim, but it was completely new for us. And it's so easy to learn because, like you said, the RV community is so giving.
Right.
I mean, we were at a volunteer project down in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and right before we got there, our water pump went out and we were boondocking. And I tell everybody around that I am the least handy full-time RVer in the world. And one of the other volunteers had a spare pump. A couple others, showed me how to change it out. And, we were up back in business. So
nice.
It is a really special community. And, I think the fact that you went and kind of relied on that community is really smart.
I'll tell you this. I borrowed a class. It's a very small class C. My sister-in-law during COVID got married up at Vogel State Park, and so I borrowed a class C RV. And I was the one at the dump station who shot excrement all over the place. And so here I am without any rubber gloves or anything. I mean, it was, I was just, I hit rock bottom. I'm like kicking it with my feet into the access point and wiping it down. And there's a line behind me. And I'm like, I am so sorry. But they were gracious. They were first, they didn't know we were doing an RV resort. We were in the middle of building it. But I didn't have the heart to tell them. I was trying to hide up any Talona Ridge gear that I had, but they were just gracious through that situation. And I really was terrified in the moment, but I look back at that and go, what a group of people to be around, to be able to make a mistake like that, especially in this new climate we're in, where people's fuses have become even more short.
Yeah, they have.
And that's what our staff's been grateful for too. We've had some people come in from different workplaces and starting to work with us, and they say it's a night and day difference, because you guys have been so gracious as we're trying to get set up. It's like we feel terrible on the bits of our stomach when we don't have some of these fire pits and stuff working like they're supposed to do in our amenity areas, and they're like, "Oh no, we understand. It's a supply chain. I bet you can't even get that part." It's so. It's just such a morale boost when stuff like that happens, because you don't get that in other sectors. We had a lady coming from some food services, and she just said, people's just got mean. Now she's back here. She's like, nope, it's just some people. It's like there's still a lot of good people out here.
There really are,
and
it's incredible.
That's been the other blessing through all this, is just getting to experience our new type of customer. And it makes us even more excited to try to do all that we can do.
And I think, when you see what you guys are looking to accomplish here, and the fact that you are having a conversation with the end user, that's a big deal. And I mean, before we'd set up this podcast via email before we got here. And, you and I started talking before you realized, that we were doing the podcast there at the pool the other day. And, you really, were taking an interest into my thoughts, before, wanting to get feedback. And I think that's very important. I think it's really smart. You guys have live music going on a Friday and Saturday night. I think that's something that's really cool that not, all RV resorts are doing out there. So, you've also got big plans across the street once this, project is done. Not like this wasn't big enough.
I know. Yeah. It's only a miniature city here, but that's okay. And luckily we have 141 sites. I've been to some of these places that have
300 some sites.
Yeah. And it's a lot of them though are in at least it's flat where they're doing it. We're on the side of a mountain. I can't even comprehend what that would have been like.
So tell me a little bit about the bigger vision of what you're looking to do across the street. Then.
We bought that land with what I thought was going to be residential plans and stuff, but we've fallen in love with the RV industry so much. And because of our location, we're about an hour and 20 minutes from Atlanta. Up here, we're right off the highway 515, which it's off of 75, which gets you up towards Chattanooga. What I've been hearing from a lot of other RVers, especially coming from other parts of the country, is how easily navigable this area is. And, like I said, it wasn't forethought. Our engineers in North Georgia weren't going, man, in 20 years, let's make sure a guy in a 45-foot bus can get where he needs to go. Right. I mean, it's nobody knew they would get that big back then. So this area is just, North Georgia in particular, is very RV friendly. And they're very pro RV. There's a lot of RV owners in the state of Georgia. And so we're rethinking what our plans were. And so we went to a couple of, when I say we went to a couple of resorts, we went to a couple of resorts in a car. We sent a few of our staff in an RV. We had to rent them to go send them there to be, don't be suspicious.
Did you give them tips in the dump station before?
But
here's what you don't do.
Here's what you don't do to be, to stand out. And so there was a couple. We'd come up in a car. Some of our work cars aren't the prettiest, and they'd be like, we take a tour, and they're like, but we're going to have to guide you around because we don't trust you. And I was like, that's a good security plan. We're taking note of that. It's like, that's well thought out. So we've some of these bigger ones, they'll have a restaurant on site, and they'll have a big store. We've got the space for a store, but we've also got Walmart literally within 3 minutes down the street, but you can't see it and you can't hear it, but it's right around the corner. And we talked with the management of the Walmart down there. They're expanding their RV section because of our proximity. And they're both of them, both the district guy and the guy who manages the store down there are both RVers.
Wow.
They got fifth wheels. They love RV. And so they called into corporate and they said, let's make a big RV section store. So on our store, we're going to try to have some of the stuff that's a little more annoying to have, that's not really worth a trip. But because of our proximity to so many stuff, it's easier for our customers to go straight to the source. They'll get the best deal and the best price. Because I don't want to overcharge people for things here. So across the street, we seem like that's a better spot to put a restaurant, to put some stores, to put some things that complement the RVers here, especially to help with RVers that can come up here and not have to tow another vehicle if they want to, and make this whole area a mountain destination place, which you can experience the mountains without having to tow a Jeep and go into the wilderness areas, which you can if you want to, but to have it all sitting here would be key. So that's our plans across the street, is to build things that are complementary to the RV resort style. Because the idea, we're putting a big roundabout on this main road out here, and it's a cut through. It's not even a main road, it's a cut through. So it'll be dropped down to 35 miles an hour. And the idea is for people to be able to bring their golf carts or their bicycles and just drive right over to a little downtown mountain area that's built around the RV concept. Do some more RV sites and try to do some cabins where people are coming up. They got some family coming to stay with them. They don't want them necessarily in their RV, so they'll have some spots for them to.
I think that's genius. I think you're kind of capturing the best of both worlds there. You've got the amenities of the RV resort, but then with what you're doing across the street, it's walkable to get to trails and do that exploring. If you're like my wife and I, who don't tow a car, so that's one of the things that, we're always looking at, what's walkable,
Right.
and
Exactly.
I know you're talking about potentially there'll be a walking path,
getting a walking path down
get
to
you
the
down
movie theater.
to the
Yep.
theater and
That's
Walmart
the
and all
great.
that
That's the
sort of
great thing.
stuff.
We've got a full functional, mountain cinemas, within a minute and a half, 2 minute walk
Yeah.
from here. So that saves us from having to try to put in like a tiny little movie area that really can't compete.
Right.
And I love that movie theater because the seats are built extra big and the popcorn is still like $6
Nice.
and not like $24 and on my firstborn son like it is down in Atlanta. So it's great having this stuff up here. That's why East Ellijay has been so great to work with.
Yeah.
Just as a business community, and the chamber and everybody up here, they've all been pro RV, which has been really helpful.
Yeah.
I've heard some places that there's misconceptions and stuff out there. They don't quite know what it fully is.
Right.
And so there's a lot of skepticism involved. But a lot of these people up here are RVers themselves. When we went to the chamber for the first time, several of the ladies were RVers. And they're like, we know exactly what you're talking about. You bring this in right now.
Right.
So it was fantastic as far as all the different government agencies.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's huge when you're doing a project like this, for sure.
It's saved the day with some of the flexibility they gave us just with the engineering problems that would pop up. Like if we were doing this in an urbanized area with a lot more lack of leniency as regards to making a change and then having to redo the entire set of plans for a small, simple field change to reroute a sewer line 2 feet to the left because there's a piece of blue granite there that won't budge. We blasted it, we've shot at it, we've hit it, and it's not moving. So we have to move. So the having our engineers and our inspectors here that can help make those field changes was great. We're long-term hold people. We didn't build this thing to build it and then sell it and move on to the next project. We built it to hold on to it for a while. So the city knew that, we knew that. So it behooves us when we're putting in this stuff to make it long-term, user-friendly, maintenance-friendly, and put it in the right way. Because if something happens with a water leak shooting out of the ground, guess whose problem that is? Yeah, so it behooves us to make sure it's in the right way.
Yeah. And why is the family so invested in the long term here?
It kind of goes back to that legacy concept. It's neat to be up here in the mountain area where our family started, and to be able to come back up here and do a project after a 45-year company history of working hard,
coming back to your roots,
from the bottom, coming back to the roots. And what's interesting about Appalachia is there's a lot of people who were born and raised up here, my grandfather included, that they kind of looked back at it. We look at the beauty of the mountains and the waterfalls and stuff. They didn't necessarily see it that way. There was much more of almost like a shame concept for it because it was poverty. This is poor people lived in the mountains, and civilization was down in the cities. And so when we came up here, even when we were talking with some of the locals that had been up here their entire lives, and I wanted to know the stories of their families and what goes into, essentially, while world history is going on, I mean, there's not much changing up there in the mountains, and you're kind of cut off from other parts of what's even happening in the United States, and so you've got to work with what you have before you. I find that fascinating. Because it's you're forced to deal with the variables you have before you, and you can't call in a big army like they eventually did when they started doing the TVA and the damming up some of these areas to help bring hydroelectric power. They put in the highway. This is 515 that was put in or I think it was the mid-90s, the early to mid-90s when they put that in. Mid-90s, yeah. So it's still relatively new.
Yeah.
I mean, this Yukon Road, which is that road looking right over there, that used to be the main road coming up here. And it was, if you're coming up north on 515, you're pretty much on top of the mountains up there. So this was a pretty secluded area before then, and it wasn't even seen as a destination area, 15 years ago, and has become so.
Yeah, but it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, this is our first time up here in this area, and everywhere you look, there's just beautiful mountains.
A lot of wilderness areas. It's a neat history. It goes back into the Cherokee Nation being up here. This was some of the centers of their civilization. Before them, it was the Creek Indians. They think it was one of the Spanish explorers. I think it was Hernando de Soto. It was in the late 1400s, early 1500s when they think he made his expedition up through here. And there's up in Fort Mountain, there's old city walls that were built that they think might have gone back to the Inca civilization. So there's a lot of interesting things that have been found up here. This was a pretty heavily logged area, unfortunately, back in the I guess that would have been the 50s and 60s and 70s. There's still some areas of some old growth forest, but it was logging before that. Now it turned into chickens, and now it's turned into an agro tourism area. We're the top wine producer for the county of Georgia, for the state of Georgia. We're the top apple producer for the state of Georgia. We've the mountain biking capital of the state of Georgia. So we've got about a third of the land up here that's all state or federal wilderness area, and I think that helps add to the natural beauty of the area. That's kind of why we chose. We'd been coming up here for a long time, and we'd actually seen them doing the grading for this project back in the early 2000s when we were doing our first subdivision. Right. That was doomed to not fail, but be put on hold with the last recession. So we always fell in love with this area. I've had a lot up here that I'm finally getting to build on for 15 years. So
that's cool. And I know, like with the music that you did last night, you also had wine and beer sales there. But the thing with the wine is you were featuring local wineries. So again, why is that important to you to kind of just?
It goes back into the. I think people, when they're traveling around the United States, they're searching for uniqueness. I mean, you can go get your Costco wine, but you can try some of the naturally grown stuff that's up here. And I'll admit some of it's a little sour, but some people like that. I've had to become a wine connoisseur being up here in wine country. A couple years ago, I could tell you what a white and a red was, and that was about it.
Right.
So I'm still pretty much there at the bottom, but it's neat to see because I've gotten to know some of the vineyard owners and stuff up here, and they were very proud of their work. And some of them have, family roots up here. It seems to be a common thing that some of the generations that have moved away are coming back. And Ellijay, in particular, a couple years ago, I think it was voted one of the friendliest towns in the United States. Wow. It's very just people up here are very, very friendly, and it's neat. It's nice to see an area that's now getting recognized for, like Gary Engel over at Ingelheim Vineyard. He was the president of the Wine Association for Georgia, but he's won some awards out in California. So it's neat to see this area start to become, I guess what we've always seen it as is this beautiful little piece of heaven up here. So.
Yeah. So what's the reaction when you go into some of these local wineries and say, hey, this is what we're doing. There's going to be people coming in here from all over the country. We want to feature your product. Like, how's that received?
Some of them we had to go and be like, well, what is an RV resort? so they were like you. So we start there. We actually, what's interesting is we got so busy we had grand plans of going to meeting everybody personally, and doing the river adventures up here and getting to be able to say, all right, this is what to do up here. We got so busy building the project because of the manpower shortages and stuff we weren't able to get to know as many people as we wanted to. What helped our reputation was we had a YouTube group come up called Switch It Up, and it was Todd and Sheila and their Switch crew. This was their first ever rally as a YouTube group because they want to focus on community.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were set to have a rally here. And I called them about 3 months before the rally was going to happen and said, guys, you booked the entire resort. I don't think it can happen. We've got 141 sites we're supposed to have. I've got 37 ready, and that's it. What can we do? Can we move it? Can I give you your money back? They really wanted to have it. So we were going to try to boondock people over in this field over here.
Okay.
And we turned out the concrete finally turned back on. We were able to get all the RVs that came. We doubled a few up at the top. We were able to get all of those sites down in Hawk Valley finished. They were not landscaped. I mean, it was a muddy mess. But the concrete
there was a concrete
was on, and
pad
the power
there.
was on, and the water was on some of them. And we were I was terrified. I threw up that morning as they were getting ready to check in because we had people checking in. There was asphalt being laid at the other far end of the site as other RVs were pulling in and the steam's rising up. It was a nightmare. It's a nightmare situation. Everybody had warned us, in your hospitality, don't open your business too early because you'll get a bad reputation. And here we are in a mud-filled mess.
Opening the business.
Having an entire rally. Not only is it our first rally, these are our first customers. We had no idea what we were doing. Once again, these people were so gracious.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it was, I wish we got everything on our end on film because we had that night, all the power was turned on, the transformer blew across the street down towards the Longhorns. We heard this big explosion and all the power on the whole resort goes off. And me and my brother were working on a fire pit up there. I just laid on the ground and curled up a little ball. I said, this isn't real. This isn't real. We didn't do this. We're back in the apartments, aren't we? And then sure enough, though, the power came back on about an hour later. Thank goodness. But these people went around to businesses. They went to the wineries. They went to Amicalola State Falls. They donated like 800 pounds of food to the shelter, the food pantry up here. And Ellijay fell in love with them.
Yeah. They
fell in love with the concept of these RVers are fantastic. They already knew who RVers were because there were some other great parks and camps and stuff up here. There was a few that thought there was a conspiracy theory that Talona Ridge was laundering money or something because all of a sudden RVs were all over the place and then for 3 days and then they were gone. But that's what started and that's what's helped with our relationship with the city. That goes back to humility. We're not. I feel awkward going, hey, I'm doing this big fancy RV park. You should sell me your wine. What's helped out is our guests going and say, hey, we're staying in RV. We're staying at the Talona Ridge RV Resort. Your
doing
wine's
the marketing
delicious.
for you.
Like 9 bottles. And so these people are coming to us going, your customers are amazing. They're polite. They're wonderful. They're our dream customers. What can we do to help participate in this story? Yeah. And that's how this stuff has been happening.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So just about out of time, but little shout out. How can people book? What's the website?
Yeah, so we've got, it's Talona Ridge RV Resort.com. You just type in Talona Ridge or Talona Ridge RV. I'm terrible at internet finding things, so we tried to make it as simple as possible. You guys can give us a call or book online.
What's the phone number?
It is, I have to double check here. This was the question that was asked to me at our grand opening. We had our ribbon cutting last week, and Lisa Salmon from the chamber, she asked me that. She goes, "What's your phone number?" I'm standing there going, I don't know. Luckily, our marketing lady was like, "It's 706-636-2267." So I was like, "All right, I'm gonna get that." I don't have any tattoos. That's gonna be my first.
That'll be
tattoo.
The first one on your forearm.
Yeah. Yep. And so we're pretty easy to reach, and come on up.
Cool. Well, like I said, just speaking firsthand, we have loved our experience here. We will definitely be back. Can't wait to see how everything else comes together. You have an incredible vision here, and I think it's really gonna take off. I think the word of mouth, in the RV community is gonna spread quickly, and I think you guys are gonna be very successful. And I wish you the best of luck. For sure.
We appreciate it. Well, we appreciate you guys being a part of this this story, because it takes. I mean, you guys are why this place exists, and we're grateful for our customers that we get to serve in this. This is fun.
Yeah.
It makes it fun.
Yeah, cool. So yes, that brings us to our final question. I told you before that the subtitle of the podcast is "Many Little People in Many Little Places," which comes from the opening lyrics of a Michael Franti song called "Gloria," which go, "When many little people in many little places do many little things, and the whole world changes." So, what's one of the little things that Wes does on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place?
Well, I try to bring in a little bit of humor and make light of sometimes the things that we're having to deal with. I try to do that in all aspects, and it helps not only lighten the situation. For instance, the Switch It Up rally wanted me to be Bigfoot. Well, I'm 5'4". I'm not a very imposing Bigfoot. I just kind of ran with that. So I was medium foot. And it's just small things like that help keep the situations light and keep the situations human. Because even when we have problems that pop up with our guests, or we have some of our staff that's frustrated at the computer not doing stuff, and just a small little comment there can help bring the reality of the situation to more of just one more little step we got to take in our daily walk of life to make it more manageable. And some things seem large, but when you get to them, they're not that large.
Right.
Just take a deep breath and make fun of yourself.
Yeah.
Get through it.
Laughter is incredible medicine, no doubt about it. So if we can't laugh at ourselves, there's a problem.
Exactly.
So I love that answer. But I know you're super busy here, and I know you're short staffed, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, sir.
And hopefully we can help share your story and get some more people out here.
I'm excited. I've got some of your podcasts to catch up on, and you got me this wonderful book, Beauty of the Diamond, new edition. I love this. I was not a good coach, but I was a coach for 2 years, and I can't wait to get into this. This is going to be my Easter read tomorrow, so I appreciate it.
Awesome, no problem. Folks out there listening, be sure to check out my other blogs and podcasts at danclouser.com. Pick up The Beauty of the Diamond at Amazon, and my new book, The Journey of My Mother's Son, should be out any day now, so it'll be available on Amazon as well. Wes, again, thanks for the time, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.